In hospice, I've learned that some of the most important conversations don't start with words. They begin with a pause, a shared silence, a look that says, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. Talking about death with the people we love can feel frightening. We worry about saying the wrong thing, or saying it too soon, or opening a door we're not sure how to close. So we wait. And often they wait too. Not because they don't want to talk, but because they're protecting us the same way we're protecting them. At the bedside, I've seen how much relief can come from gentle honesty, not big speeches, not perfect sentences, just simple truth spoken softly. Sometimes it's a question, sometimes it's a memory, sometimes it's just sitting close enough to let the moment speak for itself. This is a reflection on those quiet moments, on what happens when we choose presence over fear and listening over fixing, on how bringing up death with care and love can actually bring us closer to life and to each other. I've been at many bedsides where the room feels full even when there are only two people in it, full of love, history, unfinished sentences, and questions that haven't been spoken out loud yet. When someone is nearing the end of life, those unspoken things don't disappear. They grow heavier. You can feel them in the pauses between breaths, in the way someone's hand tightens when a certain topic comes close and then drifts away again. People often think bringing up death means giving up hope. But in hospice, I've seen the opposite. I've seen how naming what's already being felt can soften a room, how it can let everyone exhale. Death, when it's present, doesn't need to be invited in. It's already there. What's missing is often permission to talk about it. Loved ones usually know, even when no one has said the word. They notice the changes, the weight loss, the way sleep becomes deeper and longer, the way conversations shorten. Patients know too. They feel it in their bodies long before anyone confirms it. And yet both sides stay quiet, trying to protect each other. A kind of mutual guarding, each person carrying the same truth alone. I remember how often families would pull me aside and whisper, "Don't tell them they're dying." And later the patient would wait until the room was empty and ask me just as quietly, "Am I dying?" Both of them exhausted from holding the same secret, both of them afraid that saying it out loud would break something fragile. What they didn't realize was that the silence was already doing the breaking. Talking about death doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be a formal conversation where everyone sits down and finds the right words. Most of the time, it starts small. A question asked sideways, a sentence that trails off. What do you think happens after this? Or I've been thinking a lot lately. Sometimes it starts with tears, sometimes with a memory, sometimes with nothing more than I'm scared. In hospice, fear is a familiar visitor, but fear changes shape when it's shared. When someone finally says, I think I'm dying, and the person they love doesn't turn away, something settles. Not everything, not the grief, but the loneliness, the feeling of being the only one who knows what's coming. I've watched people hold on to life with fierce strength, and I've watched them soften when they realize they don't have to pretend anymore. There's a difference between fighting death and denying it. Fighting can be meaningful. Denial often just makes people feel alone. When death is acknowledged gently, it allows conversations to move where they need to go, toward forgiveness, toward gratitude, toward remembering, toward rest. Many families worry that if they bring up death, it will make their loved one lose hope. But hope changes near the end of life. It doesn't disappear. It shifts. Hope becomes about comfort instead of cure, about being seen instead of being saved, about knowing that the people you love will be okay, or at least supported when you're gone. Those hopes don't have room to breathe unless death is allowed into the conversation. I've seen patients waiting for someone to give them permission to talk about what they're feeling. They'll test the waters with small comments. I don't think I'll be here next Christmas. I'm so tired. I think my body is telling me something. When those comments are brushed aside with "don't talk like that" or "you'll be fine," something closes, not out of anger, but out of self-protection. They learn that this part of their experience isn't welcome. When someone near the end of life feels shut down like that, they often stop trying. They keep their thoughts to themselves. And those thoughts don't go away. They just echo in the quiet moments of the night. I've sat with patients who told me they felt like they were disappearing before they'd even died. Not because their body was failing, but because their truth had nowhere to land. Bringing up death doesn't require certainty. You don't have to know exactly how much time is left. You don't have to have answers. You only need honesty. Saying something like, I don't know what's coming, but I feel like things are changing, can open a door. Saying, I'm here with you, no matter what, can be enough to let someone step through. Presence matters more than words. I've watched conversations where very little was said, but everything was understood. A daughter brushing her mother's hair while quietly crying. A husband lying beside his wife in a hospital bed, their foreheads touching, neither of them speaking, both of them knowing. These moments aren't about explaining death. They're about acknowledging it together. Sometimes the person who is dying brings it up first. Sometimes they ask directly. Other times they circle the subject carefully, afraid of hurting the people they love. They might say, I want you to be okay, or promise me you'll take care of yourself. Those are often openings, invitations, ways of saying, I know I'm leaving and I need to talk about it. When those invitations are accepted, the conversation can deepen in ways that are unexpectedly gentle. I've also seen loved ones initiate the conversation, often with shaking voices, often apologizing before they even begin. I don't want to upset you, but that apology says a lot. It says, I love you and I'm scared. And that's okay. Fear doesn't disqualify you from having these conversations. It makes you human. What matters is how the conversation is held, not forcing it, not rushing it, allowing silence, letting tears come without trying to stop them, letting laughter come too, because it often does. Some of the most tender moments I've witnessed included laughter, remembering something silly, sharing an inside joke. Death doesn't erase joy. Sometimes it sharpens it. In hospice, I learned that people often want to talk about death not because they are giving up, but because they're making sense of their lives. They want to know they mattered. They want to tell their stories. They want to say things they didn't know how to say before. When death is avoided, those stories stay locked inside. When it's acknowledged, they find their way out. There's also relief in planning, not the practical details alone, though those can matter too, but emotional planning. Saying goodbye in ways that feel right, saying I love you without it feeling rushed or panicked, saying I'm proud of you, saying I forgive you, or even I'm sorry. These words don't always come easily. They often need the honesty of death to bring them forward. Some people worry that talking about death will make it happen sooner. I understand that fear. But from what I've seen, avoidance doesn't slow death down. It only delays connection. The body follows its own timeline. The heart, however, responds to truth. When someone feels heard and understood, they often relax. Their breathing softens, their anxiety eases, not because death has been welcomed, but because loneliness has been relieved. There are times when someone doesn't want to talk openly about death, and that needs to be respected too. Openness doesn't mean forcing a conversation. It means listening. If someone says they're not ready, that's information. You can still be present. You can still say, I'm here whenever you want to talk. Even that can be comforting. In hospice, timing is delicate. Some conversations happen early when the person still has energy. Others happen in the quiet hours of the night when the world feels smaller and safer. Some never happen in words at all, but in touch, in shared tears, in long looks that say more than language ever could. I've watched people wait for the right moment and miss it, and I've watched people speak imperfectly and create something meaningful. There is no perfect way to bring up death. There is only honesty and care. Even stumbling words can carry love. Even silence, when it's shared, can be a kind of conversation. What stays with me most are the moments when someone finally says what they've been holding. The shift in the room is almost physical. Shoulders drop, breaths deepen. The pretending stops. There's a kind of peace that can enter, even alongside sadness, not a dramatic peace, a quiet one, the kind that comes from not being alone with the truth anymore. I've sat with patients who told me they felt lighter after talking openly with their loved ones, not because death was no longer frightening, but because they no longer had to carry the fear by themselves. I've also sat with families who told me later that they were grateful they talked, even though it was painful. Those conversations became something they held on to after the death. Proof that they were honest. Proof that they were present. Death has a way of clarifying what matters. Smaller advances lose their sharpness. Old arguments fade. What remains is love in its many forms. Talking openly allows that love to be expressed while there's still time. Not perfectly, not without tears, but truthfully. In the end, bringing up death with someone you love is not about preparing for their absence as much as it is about honoring their presence. It's about saying, I see you, I know what's happening, and I'm here with you in it. That kind of honesty doesn't make the loss easier, but it makes it more real, more connected, more human. And often in those conversations, something unexpected happens. The fear that seems so big becomes quieter. The words that felt impossible begin to come. And in the shared space between what is ending and what still remains, there is a tenderness that doesn't need fixing. Only holding, only time, only the courage to stay, to listen, to breathe together in the middle of everything that cannot be changed and everything that still can be said and everything that is felt without needing to be named, as the room settles into a kind of honest stillness where love continues, even as the shape of life begins to change, slowly, gently, in ways that are felt long before they are understood. I've learned that silence is often misunderstood. People think silence means avoidance or fear or not knowing what to say. But in hospice, silence is rarely empty. It's usually full of listening, full of watching, full of feeling what words would only interrupt. When death is near, timing becomes its own kind of language. You can feel when a moment is open and when it's closed. You can feel when a question is being invited and when it would feel like too much. Loved ones often worry about choosing the wrong time to talk about death, as if there is a single correct moment that announces itself clearly. In reality, those moments arrive quietly and they don't stay long. I've seen people miss them because they were waiting for certainty, waiting for the doctor to say something definitive, waiting for the patient to bring it up first, waiting for the fear to go away. But fear rarely leaves on its own. It softens when it's met with presence. Presence is not about filling space with words. It's about staying, about not looking away when the conversation edges close to something tender, about allowing pauses without rushing to fix them. Some of the most meaningful exchanges I've witnessed happen slowly between long stretches of quiet where both people were gathering the courage to remain honest. There's a kind of silence that protects and a kind that isolates. The difference is subtle. Protective silence feels shared. Isolating silence feels lonely. When both people are quiet together, aware of what's happening, that silence can feel warm, even sacred. But when silence is used to avoid acknowledging the truth, it can feel cold, even when the room is full of love. In hospice, I often watched people communicate without saying anything directly about death. A mother asking her son if he remembers how she used to tuck him in. A partner asking, "Will you be okay?" A patient carefully giving away small personal items. These are not casual acts. They are conversations spoken in another language. Timing matters because the body and the heart don't always move at the same pace. There are days when someone has energy and clarity and days when they don't. There are moments when a person is ready to talk and moments when they are simply trying to get through the hour. Being present means noticing those rhythms instead of forcing a conversation because it feels overdue. I've seen loved ones arrive with speeches prepared, only to realize the moment called for listening instead. I've also seen people speak up at unexpected times, like in the middle of the night, when the world feels quieter and safer. Those nighttime conversations often feel different, less rushed, less performative, more honest. Silence during those moments isn't awkward. It's necessary. It gives space for emotions to surface without being pushed. It allows someone to cry without being interrupted. It allows thoughts to form slowly. It allows the truth to emerge at its own pace. Many people fear silence because they worry it means they're failing, that they should be saying something wise or comforting. But presence doesn't require wisdom. It requires attention, sitting at the bedside, holding a hand, letting someone talk without correcting or reassuring them away from their feelings. I've watched people try to talk openly about death while also trying to control the outcome of the conversation. They rush to say, everything will be okay, when what's really needed is, this is hard. They change the subject when tears appear, not realizing that the tears are part of the conversation, not a problem to solve. Timing also includes knowing when not to speak, when someone is exhausted, when pain is high, when confusion has set in. Openness doesn't mean constant discussion. It means being available. It means letting the door stay unlocked even if no one walks through it that day. I've seen patients who would only talk about death after a loved one had been sitting quietly with them for a long time, an hour, sometimes 2. Something about that steady presence built trust. It said, I'm not here to rush you. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to be with you. Silence can also be a test. a way someone nearing the end of life checks whether their truth will be welcomed. They may pause after saying something heavy, watching the reaction. Do you stay? Do you look away? Do you change the subject? Or do you remain still, letting the weight of the moment exist without trying to lighten it? Those responses matter. They shape whether the conversation continues or closes. When silence is met with calm presence instead of discomfort, it tells the person they are safe to go deeper. I've noticed that timing often aligns with vulnerability. When someone admits they are afraid, when they say they're tired in a way that feels different than before, when they ask a question that doesn't really need an answer. These are openings. They don't announce themselves loudly. They require attention. Loved ones sometimes worry that staying silent means missing their chance. But presence is not passive. It's active listening. It's choosing to stay engaged even when nothing is being said. It's noticing the small shifts in tone, posture, breathing. It's understanding that communication doesn't always come in full sentences. In hospice, I learned that people often need time to gather their thoughts about death. They may stop and start again. They may contradict themselves. One day they're ready to talk, the next day they're not. Timing means allowing that inconsistency without taking it personally. Silence also gives room for memory. When words stop, memories often rise. People recall moments from long ago, sometimes with surprising clarity. Those memories are not distractions. They are part of how people make sense of their lives as they approach the end. Talking openly about death often weaves naturally into remembering life, but only if there's enough space for both. I've seen conversations unfold where the most important part wasn't what was said, but what was allowed. Tears without apology, long pauses without pressure, hands held without explanation. These moments don't look dramatic from the outside, but they are deeply meaningful. Timing is also about readiness on both sides. Sometimes a loved one is ready to talk, but the patient is not. Sometimes it's the other way around. Presence means respecting that difference without withdrawing. You can be ready and still wait. You can want to talk and still listen. I've watched people sit together in silence for days, and then suddenly a conversation happens. Not because anyone forced it, but because the moment felt right. The silence had done its work. It had built trust. It had softened fear. It had made room. There's a quiet kind of courage in staying present without knowing what will come next. In not rehearsing responses, in allowing yourself to be affected by what you eat. Talking openly about death isn't just about words, it's about creating an environment where truth feels safe. In hospice, I saw how rushed conversations often left people feeling unsettled, while slower ones left a sense of completion, even if nothing was resolved. Completion doesn't mean answers. It means connection. It means feeling seen and heard in real time. Silence also honors the fact that some things are beyond language. Fear of the unknown, grief for what will be lost, love that feels too big for words. Presence allows those experiences to exist without trying to shrink them into something manageable. Timing is rarely perfect. Conversations about death are often messy, interrupted, emotional, but when they are held with patience and presence, even imperfect moments can become meaningful. What matters is not saying everything, but being willing to stay. I've seen people say very little and communicate everything. A nod, a squeeze of the hand, a shared tear. These gestures carry weight because they happen in the right moment, surrounded by quiet attention. In the end, silence and timing are not obstacles to openness. They are part of it. They shape the space where honesty can live. They allow conversations about death to unfold gently, without force, without performance, rooted in the simple act of being there together, noticing, listening, waiting, allowing the truth to surface in its own way, at its own pace, held by presence rather than words, carried by moments that don't need explanation, only care, only patience, only the willingness to remain, even when nothing is being said, even when everything is being felt. I've learned that talking openly about death is less about having the right words and more about showing up fully. People often think they need to script these conversations to find the perfect sentence that will comfort or protect. But in hospice, I've seen that authenticity matters far more than polish. Being present, even imperfectly, allows honesty to exist in a space that feels safe. When someone is nearing the end of life, they are acutely aware of how much is left unsaid. They notice glances, hesitations, and half-finished sentences. Loved ones notice too. Each person often believes they are protecting the other, while in truth what they are protecting is themselves from grief, fear, or the unknown. Those layers of protection can make it feel impossible to start a conversation, and yet even the smallest opening can change everything. I've observed that the act of speaking openly about death often begins in fragments, a single question, a whispered thought, am I going to die soon? Or what happens after this? Sometimes it starts with a sigh, a tear, or even a laugh, remembering a moment long past. What matters is that the invitation is there and it is noticed. Even a brief acknowledgement, I hear you, can allow the conversation to unfold naturally. Presence in these moments is active, not passive. It's noticing the pauses, the body language, the breaths that shorten or deepen. It's listening without trying to solve the fear, fix the sadness, or explain away the grief. In hospice, I've learned that people often do not need answers. They need witnesses. Someone who can sit beside them and say, silently or aloud, I'm here with you in this. Timing plays an invisible but crucial role. Sometimes the opportunity to talk arises in the morning when energy is fresh and spirits are lighter. Other times it comes in the quiet of night when the world feels smaller, safer, and more intimate. I've seen families miss moments because they were waiting for the perfect time or the right words. In reality, the perfect time is rarely obvious, and the right words often emerge in the act of speaking, not before. I've witnessed conversations that seemed small on the surface but carried immense weight. A hand held, a memory shared, a tear acknowledged. Words are not always needed to communicate love, regret, gratitude, or fear. The courage to be fully present, to stay even when the conversation drifts toward discomfort, is what allows connection to deepen. Fear is always present in these exchanges, but it changes when it is shared. Patients and loved ones often carry unspoken anxieties, worries about loss or guilt over past mistakes. When those fears are acknowledged gently rather than avoided, they often lose some of their power. Speaking openly about death creates a space for vulnerability to be met with compassion rather than denial. I've also noticed that talking about death shifts hope rather than destroys it. Early in life, hope might mean curing illness, prolonging days, or returning to normalcy. Near the end of life, hope changes shape. It becomes about comfort, presence, and meaning. It's about being seen, being remembered, being able to say the things that matter before time runs out. Allowing conversations about death lets that hope breathe in its new form. Many families worry that addressing death will overwhelm or depress their loved one. In truth, avoidance often carries heavier burdens. Unspoken truths can isolate people, creating distance even in intimate relationships. Openness, even when tentative or awkward, can relieve isolation, allowing both patient and loved ones to feel seen, acknowledged, and supported. Conversations about death are rarely linear. They start, stop, and start again. People may contradict themselves, express fear one moment and acceptance the next. Being present means holding that inconsistency without judgment. It means honoring each pause, each tear, each hesitant word, understanding that the process of speaking openly about death is not a single event, but a series of unfolding moments. I've observed that sometimes the most meaningful conversations happen without words at all. A touch, a shared silence, a gaze held long enough to convey understanding. These gestures often speak louder than any sentence. They demonstrate that you are there fully, without distraction, without trying to fix what cannot be fixed. I've also seen how small acknowledgments of mortality can ripple outward. A patient might say, I feel tired, and that statement opens space for questions, reflections, and shared memories. A loved one might admit, I'm scared, and that vulnerability can release months or years of unspoken emotion. These moments, small and ordinary, often leave lasting impressions. Openness about death requires courage, not just from the person facing the end of life, but also from those who love them. It asks us to confront our own fears, our own grief, and our own uncertainty. But it also offers the chance for connection, for understanding, and for moments of grace that only arise when truth is met with presence. In hospice, I've seen families walk this delicate line. They navigate discomfort and emotion with care, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with unexpected tenderness. They discover that speaking, openly about death does not diminish love or hope. It reshapes them into forms that are more honest, more intimate, and ultimately more sustaining. I've learned that talking openly about death is not about finding answers or controlling outcomes. It's about creating a space where honesty, presence, and empathy can exist. It's about listening as much as speaking. It's about staying through the fear, the tears, the silence, the memories, the laughter, and the moments when words fail. It's about honoring life by acknowledging its end, allowing grief and love to coexist, and allowing both patient and loved ones to feel fully seen, fully heard, and fully together in the middle of what cannot be changed. Even small moments of openness can change the texture of the remaining time. A gentle admission of fear, a quiet acknowledgement of mortality, a memory shared, a hand held. They are acts of courage that ripple through relationships. They remind us that presence matters more than perfection, and that the act of showing up fully is the greatest gift we can offer. In these conversations, I've observed the power of patience. The patient or loved one may need to circle around a topic multiple times, approaching it tentatively, retreating, then returning. The courage to wait, to listen, to offer presence without pressure allows trust to deepen. It allows honesty to unfold naturally. I've also noticed that openness encourages reflection. People begin to consider what truly matters, what they want to express, and how they want to be remembered. It brings forward gratitude, forgiveness, and expressions of love that may have been buried under the routines and distractions of life. Death can clarify priorities, and speaking about it openly can accelerate that clarity. Fear, grief, hope, love, they all intermingle in these conversations. They are messy, nonlinear, and deeply human. What matters is not controlling them, but bearing witness to them. Staying present allows people to experience the full spectrum of emotion without shame, judgment, or hurry. Ultimately, talking openly about death is an act of love. It is about showing up, listening, acknowledging reality, and allowing connection to flourish even in the face of loss. It is about letting truth be spoken gently, without force, and being willing to remain fully in that space through all its uncertainty, fragility, and profound humanity. Even when words falter, even when fear rises, even when silence stretches long, the choice to remain present, attentive, and compassionate creates a space where love, honesty, understanding can exist, and where both the person who is dying and those who love them can experience the quiet dignity of being truly seen, truly heard, and truly together in the face of what is inevitable, tender, and real.